topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
To Triversity Talk. I'm Wendy Stewart, and I'm coming to you on a wet Wednesday from New York City with really cold temperatures. Not my cup of tea, but I like Memorial Day weekend to be warm, and that's not going to be. But life goes on. Why sweat it about the weather, right? For those of you who are in the New York area, New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, as you know, Triversity is located in Milford, Pennsylvania. We are the LGBTQ Pride Center there. And a couple of announcements about Triversity. If you get our newsletter, and actually if you don't get our newsletter, please make sure you sign up for it. That's something that we've added back in again. The newsletter, we have a wonderful column in there by Kit, our newest board member, history and the LGBTQ community. Kit knows such an amazing amount. It just blows my mind. So make sure you get our newsletter. It also has all our events in it. And speaking of events, if you can, we are going to be having our garden party in Milford on this Sunday from 2 to 5. The address, of course, will be on our website. You can check it out there or go to our Facebook page where every single thing you could possibly want to know is on our Facebook page as well. And the 28th of June, we are hosting Paddle for Pride, kayaking and rafting down the Delaware. Really great event. Tremendous success last year. And I mean, what could be better than paddling for Pride? So please make sure you check out all our events. So my guest tonight, I'm so excited. She had reached out to me and of course, she has another book. She had been on this show before. And I have a very sweet spot for writers, especially more and more. There have been more and more writers in the LGBTQ community and that are coming out with novels with gay characters. And they're so interesting. And I think it's a genre going forward that you are going to see more and more characters from the LGBTQ community. I can't believe the amount of historical novels that have come my way with LGBTQ characters. So we're definitely on a trend here, which is really, really cool. So our guest tonight, you may remember the name. She was on our show with her memoir, Making the Rounds. And tonight we're going to be talking about her latest book, A Place for Us. Please welcome Patricia Grayhill.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Wendy. So
how are you?
Good to see you again.
Really good to have you back again. I'm broadcasting from New York. So if people are wondering why they're hearing ambulances and sirens going by, I am not in Pennsylvania during the week. I am in New York City, and it's very noisy here. But you know what? It's life, and we learn to live with it. Now, before the show started tonight, I was saying to you, you have been such a prolific writer, basically like a book a year since you retired from being a doctor.
Yes. Well, I've been 75 years on this earth, and I have a lot of stories.
I love that. That's great. And you're going to tell them to everybody.
Yeah. And it's especially great. Now I'm retired. Now I'm free to write whatever I want, honestly. And no one's going to deny me education or advancement or,
Right.
I'm not going to lose my job. And,
Right.
my my friends already like me or they don't. And
oh, I totally love that. If they don't, they can go take a walk at this point. You know what?
right.
Good for you. You have come to the realization, all right, that like you can do whatever you want now. And that's very empowering, isn't it?
It is for sure. For sure. So
I want to give a little backstory to people. Of course, many people that probably didn't catch the last show you were on. I think it's been well over a year. Yeah.
yes.
So, Making the Rounds was your first book. It was a memoir.
It was, and it basically covered my 20s a little bit before, and it was a memoir of my, in part, my struggle to get through medical training. And I was accepted into medical school before Title IX, so most of the my classmates were male, 95% out of a class of 100, only 5 women.
And I always like to give the time frame, which was late 60s. Yeah.
Late 60s, early 70s.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it was interesting because that was kind of like, for my remembering, the dawning of feminism around that time.
Right. And, feminism has changed over the years, but back in those days, in the late 60s, early 70s, it was primarily a movement of white middle class straight ladies.
Well, you know what? You're telling it like it is, because that's exactly how I remember it. And I remember, let's see, I was in college in the later part of the 70s. And I remember going to feminist meetings and feminist movements, and you know what? You're totally right. That's who was on board at that time.
Yeah, I mean, it's changed. Like nowadays, it's quite different, and certainly now it's much more inclusive. So it includes lesbians and trans and other people.
But without getting off track, there's big issues with feminists, many feminists, how they view trans. And that's very, very, very controversial. So, you're right. Things have changed, but sometimes I'm not sure they've changed for the better. What has changed, though, in the LGBTQ community, I know, the younger people that have come up, they're just so much more fluid, less judgmental. You remember the time of your time and my time was the word queer was just, it was an icky word. It was a put down or whatever. And that's a very positive word, and it's very much embraced. Things change, but you were going to medical school in it was a very strange time. How did you combat like sexism?
Yeah, to sort of amplify it for me, it was Utah. So I went to medical school.
In Salt Lake, wasn't it?
Salt Lake, right. And so 90% of my class was Mormon, and certainly didn't embrace my sexual identity.
Or anything. Let's just say it. Yeah.
Yeah, or anything out of the mainstream, really. And so how I combated it really was I formed alliances. And it's actually, probably relevant to current times as well. I mean, I formed alliances with people that were safe and who cared about me, and with those friendships, especially my friendship with David, a fellow medical student who didn't know he was gay at the time, but I did. and we became close friends and allies. And I think we were able to form kind of a cocoon of friends around us. And really, quite frankly, I was able to focus on the task at hand, just getting through medical school, which wasn't easy, without having to worry so much about being, found out or kicked out or whatever.
Right. It's funny saying that, because that's something we can't really wrap our heads around now. I know some of my younger viewers would be going, really? Come on.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but I remember what it was like back then. And, congratulations to you that you went against the odds. But you did the thing we always tell people to do. You have to form community, right?
Exactly. And, that's exactly what we have to do now as well.
I mean, what I was thinking about, I had you on the show when you came out with your memoir and making the rounds. It was not that long ago, and now we are in a totally different time. And I would have never called out now to be the way it is. I would not have. I can't believe like how we evolved, and now where we're at right now. It's crazy.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's shocking to me as well. But again, I have lived through dark times in the past.
Right.
And, right now, certainly we're battling headwinds and moving backwards in terms of acceptance of LGBTQ issues and rights and freedoms and such. And, I still think that, as long as we continue to live our truth and form community, and, I think that we'll be able to get through it.
Oh, I completely agree with you. And one of the things, I mean, that's happened in Pennsylvania and in New York, here in the Northeast, there's been a groundswell of quote unquote resistance. I don't just mean going to protest. That's great, because you're showing your resistance in numbers when you do that, and you're speaking out. But just in general, how people are starting to bond together and form together. I personally feel at the end of the day, it's going to take a lot of money. And in the LGBTQ community, there is a lot of money. And I think everyone has to get together and realize that we've got real power. We absolutely have real power. I think what saddens me, though, Patricia, the most is the amount of women that voted, as far as I'm concerned, anti-women. I won't even say anti-feminist. I'm going to put that to the side. I'm going to say anti-women. And right. I don't know how that came to be. I still cannot understand that for the life of me.
No, I fail to understand as well. I mean, especially if you look at the impact of denying reproductive care to women. It's been disastrous,
right,
for so many women, who have lost their lives even, and as a result of these policies and the confusion that it engenders.
Yeah.
So that saddens me a great deal. I mean, I lived through a period where, abortion was illegal.
Right. Well, you mentioned it in your first book.
Right. And that was, potentially devastating. And now here we are again. And it, in some states too, it's really not safe to be queer.
Oh, wait. Well, yeah, that's happened like in the last year and a half. It became very unsafe to be queer. And the big one, and you have a medical background, how can you deny a transgender person their hormones? I'm not even up to the surgical part. Let's just talk about the basics. A lot of people just take hormones now. How can you do that? That's awful.
Especially if they're already in process.
Yes, or in process, or they've been on them for a long time. Right. And they make it so difficult for them to get the hormones, and the amount of stress that it's added. I have a number of trans people that when all this came down, got off of social media, got off of everything. Mm-hmm. Nobody should have to live under that kind of pressure. There's absolutely no reason for it.
Yeah. Well, the trans people are the canaries in the coal mine.
Yeah,
coal
and the
mine.
coal mine, that is
They're the tip of the spear.
right.
And, I fear it just, how far is it going to go and how many people are going to be swept up in it?
Well, again, I believe in the power of numbers, right? And the more people that keep pushing back, the better it'll be. Every time somebody caves, and we all know which politicians have caved, that's a strike against it. But, I'm an optimist, Patricia. I have to believe that moving forward, in spite of what we're dealing with now, local groups are going to gain a lot of power. Again, it's going to boil down to grassroots at the end of the day.
I think so. And I'm an optimist too. And I guess, as I said before, I've lived through these dark times before. I've found ways to survive. And I hope at least maybe perhaps through my books, I can inspire other people, other marginal people to do the same, to persevere and
Absolutely.
to continue to, live their truth and be visible and fight tyranny however they can. And
In your case, how is writing cathartic for you? The first book, it's a memoir, so in the nature of what it is, it can be cathartic. But the next one being a novel, how did that work for you?
Well, the first one was Making the Rounds. It really was quite a journey for me to go back and essentially relive that time that was so tumultuous while it was happening. It was so chaotic and there was so many things going on. I was so confused. I just didn't know what I wanted in a relationship, and it was bumbling along. And when I went back and actually I was able to see patterns that I couldn't see before. And I developed some compassion for my younger self. And I was
going to ask that. Did you at least forgive your younger self? Because know a lot in the decades, a lot happened.
Of course. And I have, become a much different person, totally. But that was part of my building blocks, and to go back and really look at it honestly, it's an unvarnished version of what I experienced at that time, which I thought was important because, I feel like it wasn't just a doctor's story. It was really, about me as a human being and my struggles, and pretty unvarnished and not like, the edited version on social media, which is, I think, how we actually can connect with readers, by being honest and showing our humanity.
Right. And who we are authentically. Now, the title itself is like a double entendre.
Oh, it is. Yeah, because I went through a lot of girlfriends but at the same time, I was making medical rounds. So
right. That's what I meant. It's great.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It was a very interesting and exciting time, but I think it also has, lessons for today, on how to survive. I think one of my favorite expressions is Brene Brown, who said, someday you'll tell the story of how you overcame what you went through, and it'll be someone else's survival guide. I love that saying. Yeah. And that's what I'm kind of hoping for this book. And the next book, A Place for Us, is a novel. It has a true basis to it because it's based on my partner and I experience. We first met in 1981 and we couldn't get together because of immigration barriers. And so our relationship fizzled. But 22 years later, she appeared on my doorstep, kind of serendipitously, and, things erupted again and we had another chance. And this time we decided to fight for it. And it even if it would result in us both leaving our home countries, because there was no place that we could live together legally. So I thought it was important to write this book, but I wanted to make it a novel, partly because my partner's very private. she didn't want me, you know, telling the story exactly of our lives.
Right, exactly. Telling everybody everything.
She's British, you know, she's, you know, more reserved. And so a lot of it is actually the meeting part in 1981, not being able to get together,
Right.
and then coming together in 2003. All of that is true. And also the immigration part, like what we had to go through to find a country to live together legally, that part is all true. But the character,
it's timely for the whole thing with immigration right now. I mean, think about what's going on now, and that's what you were writing about in your novel before all of this came down the pike. That's interesting.
Yeah, and it's, you know, unfortunately, I think things are going to be hard for same-sex couples trying to immigrate. But despite, it's only been, well, I diverge.
That's fine.
Yeah. But I wanted to just say that in the novel, the characters are not me, you know, and not my partner, Linda. They're more beautiful than we are.
You know what? It's your novel. You can make them any way you want.
Right. And their personalities are not the same. If I were to sum up in one verb, the personalities, like Jo is an environmental attorney, and her verb is to protect. Yeah. And Lauren is, you know, a free-spirited British woman and her verb is to risk. Yeah. And, you know, they come together, and a lot of the scenes that I created are solely from my imagination, but I wanted to, for example, the exes of both Jo and Lauren are, there's some scenes in there where I deal with issues like emotional and physical abuse, which I think is played in the queer community, and I think it's an important issue. So I decided to put some scenes in there to kind of show that normal, healthy people sometimes find themselves
in those situations.
Yeah. And, you know, it's not to guilt trip, you know, a person for finding themselves in that situation. But so that there's those scenes that I have concocted. And also Jo's an environmental attorney. So, you know, there's an oil spill in Alaska and she goes off to deal with it. You know, so there's
that's a very probable thing that actually could happen. Yeah. And so we've got a lot of things on the table now that really do exist. The environmental issue, abuse, which, by the way, I've had a number of social workers on this show, or people, you know, in those areas. More and more organizations are dealing with that now, which is great, with support groups and interventions and all of that. So you'll be happy to know that. But I would say in the early aughts, like in 2003, not so much. Remember, we were coming out of like the 90s with AIDS, and, you know, then we had 9/11. So there was a whole lot of mishmash of things going on. But it is being dealt with more now. I love that you have chose current topics and worked them into a novel, because I feel like you do that. One of the best ways to reach people is when they can open up a book and read about themselves, whether it's a novel or a memoir. Everybody's looking for an answer, and sometimes you can find an answer in the characters, which is really.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the most satisfying things for me was when I get feedback from readers, especially in my memoir, people said, wow, you know, I could really relate to that. They feel validated. And, you know,
validated.
Yeah. And, you know, they can see themselves. And sometimes it might even help them work out their own, whatever they're dealing with in their own life. And I think the most important thing, you know, is to to show different aspects of our humanity as queer
Yeah.
people, so that, those people reading my book, I got calls from people in Kansas and Missouri,
Love
and who actually called me up and thanked me, and who feel less alone after reading my book. And that's, it got a lot of awards and, stars.
Wait, hold on. I'm not going to let you gloss over that. I have the
but that, to me, I'm kind of done with that at this stage of my life. What I want is to reach people.
No, but you know what? But look at the amount of awards. The Kirkus Review's Best Indie Book of 2022 on Making the Rounds, 2024 National Indie Excellence Awards. I mean, going down this list, seriously, that was your first shot out of the bag making the rounds.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it did give me more confidence as a writer, I have to say, to get these critical reviews. But as I said, what really touches me is to hear from readers.
Yeah.
That's what I have really enjoyed. So anyway, I wanted to say one thing about A Place for Us. It does deal, immigration. It's only been a little over 10 years that marriage equality has existed in this country, and that same-sex couples were treated equally for immigration purposes. But I worry that, despite the law that currently exists, that maybe now same-sex couples would be given greater scrutiny, have greater obstacles to
greater challenges put forth by government. Yeah.
Right. And still, even now, same-sex couples have to be legally married in the country of origin, which if you're from India or Pakistan or something, it's just not possible. So
good point.
So I, in the back of the book, I put some resources for people, who are dealing with immigration issues. And so
I think that's really great, because you wrote a novel, but you gave them resources in the back of the book in case they have to use them. And I think that's exactly what I mean about writing a book like this, reaching out to people. Mm-hmm. If you're marginalized, here's what you can do. Mm-hmm. I believe that we can take action. The one thing, no matter what, as people, the one power we have, we can take action.
Absolutely. I mean, look, I'm very proud of my alma mater, Harvard. That's where I got my MPH there. And, they said no. And look how many people, kind of jumped on board to sign pacts,
Right.
You come after one of us, you come after all of us. And
that's what it has to be.
Yeah. And so this gives me hope.
Oh, absolutely. But I think the biggest challenge now is the amount of illegal things that are going on. And if there's no political pushback towards them, like I'm not holding this administration accountable, because they're going to do every illegal thing under the book, right? But it's going to be who's pushing back. The same way Harvard pushed back and got all those people on board, Patricia, that is what it's going to take.
Yeah, I think it will. So I was very proud of them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And your alma mater to boot. So when you do your readings and things like that, what are your audiences like? What do you get from your audiences?
Well, it's really been various. I've done a number of book groups. I did one in Bellingham, Washington, which was mostly young people. And that was interesting, because it's amazing to me how little young people know about what it was like back in the day, and
Right.
how surprised they are to learn, that women didn't have equal access to education. And
Came out of a totally, totally different time.
right,
Also,
and couldn't get their own credit card without their husband's
right.
permission.
No, that's absolutely true. I know they're completely shocked by that, right?
Right. And so, I mean, that was kind of interesting. And it was lovely. Some couples brought couple of couples brought their babies, and they didn't bat an eye. One was a elementary school teacher, totally out, at work. And it's just so nice that how things have changed. I mean, there really has been so much progress. It does feel like, we're under siege right now, but still, I mean, things are so much better.
Yeah. And honestly, that I don't believe is going to change. Okay. Because again, people are going to push back against it.
Right.
These are different times. I guess what was shocking to me is that we could have gone this way politically after the roads had been paved in a different way. And I didn't know about you, but you're in the Pacific Northwest. I talk to people all over because it is a very curious thing to me. And there was even some people I knew out on Long Island that completely shocked me the way they voted. And I've discussed this with a lot of my New York friends that are like, how could this have happened? I get how this happened. A lot of people were very upset about quote unquote illegals. That became a source of contention, and they didn't care about anything else. You understand? They didn't care about abortion rights. They didn't, they just couldn't see past that.
Right.
And I had this discussion with someone the other day. Racism is a very powerful thing. And I really believe that was the turning point in a lot of ways, that they couldn't handle people not being like them. I mean, I'm going to take you back to what you said originally, medical school, self-entitled and white males, right? Yes. What we're talking about in the bigger picture here is the self-entitled white male. But the world is not that way anymore.
No. And it is beginning to reflect the way the country is reflecting the way the world is, which is very diverse, multiracial.
Thank you. BIPOC is a terminology we use all the time. So the reality is I don't believe we can go back to where we were. I agree with you. The struggle is going to be very real, especially when you're dealing with things being so irrational and laws being completely disregarded.
Yeah, that's worrisome. But
yeah,
very, very worrisome. But well, like you, I'm an optimist. I think we'll get through it.
Yeah, well, you know what? We don't have a choice. Now, you working on this book during the pandemic?
Well, I wrote Making the Rounds during the pandemic, and I was, I'm sitting at my desk with my back to my partner, writing about my old girlfriends, and, she wasn't happy, understandably. So I said, happy wife, happy life, right? So I said,
I love that, right?
I said, let's write a book together. And so we did. I mean, it was a romance. We made it up totally. I mean, it has nothing to do with our lives, but we'd get together at happy hour at 6:00 and we talk about the plot. And she's
I love that. That was a very good way to deal with it, really.
Yeah. And it worked. I mean, fortunately, she got into it. She has a degree in English, so she could correct all my grammar mistakes.
There you go.
and it was fun, I mean, we'd actually end up arguing about the characters as if they were real people. Like, no, Christina wouldn't do that. She's too straight up, or whatever. It was just, it was fun. So we ended up, and also the other thing we wanted, it has a, it starts with the two protagonists in their 20s. They meet in England, in the UK, but then, circumstances, they split up, and one gets married, has a family, and then they meet again accidentally on a golf course in Palm Springs.
Palm Springs, of course.
and sparks fly again. And but then they both have families. They both have these complications.
Complicated lives already.
And they're in their late 60s, but they still have lots of passion left. And that was the point, it's sort of like, we need protagonists that are older, that still, have lots of.
Thank you for calling that out. That is the truth. And I talk about this with women all the time. I've got girlfriends in their 80s they're like 50. All right. And they've just got it all going on. And I don't even want to use the word still. And I think I talked about this on my show this afternoon. If These Walls Could Talk, I had a woman on, Explorer. I'm like, we have to start calling out, especially with women. My God, they've got all this great stuff. And you said it, passion. How about that?
Right.
We can still be passionate, and everything should not be for youth. People are of all different ages. We, by the way, are the only culture. If you go to other cultures, there's such reverence and respect given to the elders. Here it's just like either ignored, invisible. I hate that word, but definitely invisible. And if we don't all start calling that out, it's going to continue.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was struck. I was on a panel 2 weeks ago in San Francisco with Alka Joshi, who wrote The Henna Artist, and some other authors who started writing over 50. And we're on fire,
I love it.
All of us are just like cranking out books and just having a blast, as a new career. Alka Joshi had her own advertising company, and the guy next to me was a former criminal defense attorney, and I had my career as a doctor. So, but now we write, and we call ourselves writers, and and we've got lots of stories to tell, and lots of experience. It's actually kind of hard to write. It takes a lot of discipline. But, if you've had a previous occupation that was hard and required a lot of discipline, it's not a big stretch to.
Right. And I've had at this point so many LGBTQ authors on this show, and this is what blows me away. They're winning awards all over the place because it's not just some are self-published, but a whole lot aren't. There's a whole bunch of presses out there right now that are picking up this type of thing. And they had lives as teachers before, or minister before, and getting out there now with their books and winning awards all over the place. I personally feel there's a definite trend now that we need to have, especially in our novels, LGBTQ characters. It's that's the world, right? We're all kinds of people in the world. Why would we be one kind of thing?
So in making the rounds, I thought it would just be like older lesbians that would read my book.
Oh, that's so funny. You read
right. But it turns out, it had, and you asked me about my audience. One of my audiences, I went to this one book group, and I walked in, and it looked to me like it was all older church ladies. And I thought, did they read my book? And they wanted me to come and talk to them.
Right.
And, because there's a few racy bits in there, and they were one of my best audiences.
I totally love that.
Yeah. And they bought all my books, the ones that hadn't read them. So
The point is, you don't know. You don't know. What I find interesting is in your books, Making the Rounds, and your other two books, everything starts out with a person like being like in their early part of their life, and then fast forwards to the latter part of their life. What is it about that kind of theme that appeals to you?
Well, I guess because, in real life, I met the love of my life in 1981, but, she was British and it wasn't going to work.
Right.
And then we got together again 22 years later. We had to fight for it, and had to leave our home countries and become citizens of Canada. But, I think that that's an important theme in my life. So A Golden Years and Silver Linings is obviously a second chance novel, and so is A Place for Us. My current novel, and you were talking about, the importance of having LGBTQ characters. So it's a thriller, and it's an environmental thriller, and it's kind of like two women, a physician and an environmental attorney, against big oil. And it is mostly a thriller. I mean, there's a little bit of romantic intrigue that both are one's lesbian, one's bisexual. And there's a husband in the picture, but mostly it's about the thriller. Wow. And so I'm actually going to market this book widely. It's not going to be, a lesbian thriller or, it's just going to be a thriller.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. And it also makes me think, because I do think about this a lot, when you see films now, there can be a gay character in television or whatever. Don't we hope that eventually we don't have to like underline the genre that it's in? I think about that a lot, that we don't have to objectify, that people are people. They can be gay, they can be straight, they can be fluid, but they're people at the end of the day. And in each and every person, there's something that we can grab onto, some element that we can grab onto. Yeah,
I hope so. Of course, I always think that the book I'm writing now is the best I've ever written. So I think, I'm so excited about thriller. I can't wait to.
No, that's exciting. And with a thriller, I don't have to tell you, it's got screenplay potential too.
Oh, well, we'll see. Yeah, it does have a very shocking ending.
Well, you can't divulge the ending right now, but
right. So,
but that book will be out in 2026.
Yes, it's going to be finished this summer, but I can't have two books too close together. So, I'm going to release it in January, I think. That's my current plan.
Yeah, that's the plan. Now, looking at you as a writer, what's your process?
Well, it's really, I like structure. I was a doctor. I had a routine, and the situation of interviewing patients, and it's all very structured. So I like structure. So I get up in the morning and I have my coffee, and then I sit at my computer for a little while and write. It's not always a book that I'm doing. I might write emails or, write a blog post or something.
But you start warming up.
I kind of warm up with that, and then I make a smoothie, and then I go to Aquafit, and 5 days, which I do 5 days a week. So I work out in the pool, and then come back and write until lunchtime. Then usually, and I talk about it often with my partner, what I've been working on. And she's actually writing books now too. She's written 4 romances.
It's quite incredible. You're just
I really, she's got the bug. So, and she's self-published all of them. She just wants it out there. When she's done, she's done. And
just let me get let me get it out there.
Yeah. So, so that's fun. We have a passion we can share, you know?
Absolutely. And did she come from a medical background?
No, not at all. No, she was a hospital administrator in London for a while, and then
Okay, hospital administrator, yeah.
then she taught English to when she lived in France for 20 years, and so it was her French that got us into Canada.
Yeah, I was going to ask that, right?
Yeah.
You know what? That Canadian passport is a very handy thing to have.
Yes, it is.
You know, good fallback position,
Right.
as we say. So a lot of what we talked about really is second chances, second acts. If you're going to give advice to anyone, you know, how do they get rid of the fear of trying something new and not being able to do it, and just going for it?
Yeah. Well, you know, everybody has to develop their own path. But what I was like petrified of writing my memoir, actually. And I just, you know, I wrote a bunch of stuff. I was going to throw all these journals into the burn bin because we were downsizing. And then I looked at them and I thought, you know, there's some good stuff here.
Can you imagine? I'm so glad that you didn't. And to anyone that's listening, don't do that.
Right.
I saved every piece that my daughter is young and a good writer, went to Smith College. I just got done. I'm looking at, I have everything organized, boxed. She could have cared less. I'm like, what do you want me to do with this? She's like, I don't know, get rid of it. You should see how we organized it. Exactly. And I love hearing you say this because I'm glad you stopped yourself.
Yeah. Well, keep your journals and stuff because for me, it was so handy and jarring my memory and so many things I had forgotten, you know, that were recorded and I could look back on. So that was important. So I started writing about people. First, I just wrote about the people, and then I didn't really want to share it with anyone at first. And then I have a good friend here in Canada, and we take walks together. And I talked to her about it, what I was writing, and she said she'd like to read it. And so I shared some stuff with her, and she was really, really positive. Wow. So the one word of advice is if you're going to share what you write, share it with somebody who you know is going to be positive. I mean, I didn't want any kind of editorial comments.
Right. You didn't join one of those writing workshop groups.
Well, I did eventually. In the beginning, it was important to just, if you're going to share your very tender, you know,
your tender feelings
and everything, pick someone you trust who's going to really, you know, be kind. So, and she was. And so, but eventually, you know, I knew that I needed to develop skills in writing. I've been a doctor. I've been a writer. Well, I've written lots of medical articles, but it's totally different. And so
it's a totally different thing. Talking about one's feelings, and certainly like your first book being a memoir, you uncover a lot of very emotional, very private, often very painful things.
So, you know, I took classes at Hugo House in Seattle in writing craft, and I formed a critique group. We're still meeting.
That's so cool.
I formed it just at the end of 2019, just before the pandemic, and we've been meeting ever since. It's been so useful. And then I also took a 6-month memoir writing course with Brooke Warner and Linda Joy Meyer.
Oh, I happen to know who Brooke Warner is from the feminist writer Amy Ferris.
Oh, right. Okay.
Your friend of mine. I saw her 2 weeks ago. She was on the show a couple of weeks ago, too.
Right. Oh, okay. I know. I haven't met her, but I certainly have.
You would totally love Amy. I'm going to send her this interview, too, when we're done. She's a great person. And she talks about Brooke all the time.
Well, she was my mentor in this, 6-month memoir course.
And the best, my God.
I really thought she didn't like it, but at the end, she said, when it finished, she said, would you like to publish this with She Writes Press? And I was like, what? Like, it scared me. But I decided, again, as I told you, at that point I was 70. It was like, who cares? Like, it's going to shock my University of Utah Medical School colleagues, but
excuse me, they'll get over it. What do you care at this point?
Right. So who cares? So
Patricia, do you have, because we're down to the wire here, do you have where you're going to be speaking and doing book signings?
I do. So this is my new novel, A Place for Us.
Oh, great. Can you hold it up a little closer to the camera too?
Is that
perfect? Yeah, that's great. And hang on, I love taking a picture when I have my guests on. So I want to do that. That is so perfect. You've got yourself framed really great.
Okay.
Good. Perfect.
Okay. So I will be, so my book launch, it comes out June 3rd, and it's distributed by Simon & Schuster, so it'll be everywhere.
How great.
Yeah, and it will, so my book launch will be at Third Place Books in Seattle at the Lake Forest Park store. And then I will be doing another second book launch at Village Books in Bellingham, which is a great venue. And also at the library in a small town west of Victoria, BC.
Oh, I love that area. How cool.
Yeah. So
don't forget to do a reading for the church ladies.
Oh, that will come. I think I will be doing I would love to go back and talk to the church ladies.
I know. You know what? You see, you found an audience that you didn't know you had. And that's always so fun to me,
Right. Yeah, it was fun. But I love doing book groups. So, if anybody wants to do a book group on Zoom or whatever, I really enjoy doing that. I have done them remotely. The woman in Kansas City who reached out to me subsequently set up a Zoom meeting with her book club. And that was really fun.
And it was very cool. I want to thank you for coming on. I'm very jazzed for your new book and the many more that are going to come down the pike.
Thank you.
And I'm glad that you reached out.
Me too.
That's great. I'm all for my authors out there. Creative people are a special bunch, and you're lucky. You had the what I call the art science, okay? Because you practiced medicine for a long time, and then now you're writing novels, probably with the dedication that you had for your medicine. That's very cool.
Mm-hmm. Well, in medicine, you have to listen to people's stories, right?
And very, very well put. Thank you again, Patricia. And I wish you all the best with this. And thank you to everybody who tuned in tonight. The book is called A Place for Us. Get it? It's going to be out it's great. It's coming out in Pride Month. What could be better?
Right. That was the point.
Perfect. All right. Good night, everybody. Bye-bye.